Apparently. We good, Dan? Okay, you guys ready to get started then?
Sorry.
I didn't drop them up yesterday though.
Call to order the Planning, Environment, and Development Committee meeting for January 8th, 2024 to order. We'd have roll call. John?
Here.
Jim?
Here.
Carl?
Here.
Joe? Here. Carolyn?
Here.
And I'm here, and do we have Lou online yet, or? Not yet, okay, well, when Lou comes online, can we make that vote to allow it before she gets online? Moved by Joe, seconded by Carl. Any discussion? Approve Lou Ness to attend remotely. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so Lou's good once she gets here. Okay, we'll move on to minutes approval. Oops, I gotta say hi to my grandson. Hi, Kian. There you go.
Hi, Kian.
Hey, I made him put his phone down for this. So.
That's my son-in-law. I just sent my son-in-law to Australia. His name is Kian. Nice name.
Okay, we'll move on to number 2, minutes approval. Motion to move approve the minutes from the December 5th meeting. Moved by Jim, seconded by Joe. Any discussion regarding the minutes for the December 5th meeting? No discussion. All those in favor to approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes approved. Move on to public comment. Scott, public comment.
Public comment?
One public comment, Mr. Vanderspool, and Mr. Vanderspool knows the rules. 3 minutes, please.
Good morning, my name is Jan Vanderspool. I live in Bull Run Estates off of Mason Hill Road. I've appeared before this committee multiple times as an advocate to ask for the county's help to control spongy moth hotspots and control their damage to the oaks that have occurred. I've cited examples in my neighborhood. I tried to speak at the last meeting about what I heard as a concern about impact of the spray on animals. I mentioned that it's been used for multiple decades worldwide on millions, if not billions of acres, and that it's benign to all animals except the caterpillars, which have a unique chemistry in their gut that activates the bacteria. But I was criticized for not being sensitive to the impact to the food chain of the animals. I'd like to just offer a thought on that as well today. We are talking about or asking for help with spraying hot spots, and those hot spots are a limited acreage. By my understanding, anecdotally, 90 acres is quite a large example of a hot spot. And if you consider that as a circle that has a radius less than a quarter mile, you can walk across less than a quarter mile in about 13 minutes. And so in terms of impact to rodents and raccoons and skunks and chipmunks and mice, I would suggest that as they forage for food, I wouldn't consider impacting their immediate food chain in the immediate vicinity for a 13-minute walk or hike or whatever as a significant impact to them. It'll be a inconvenience, but I don't see it as killing off an animal species. So I hope you, again, consider that as something regarding the impact of the spray to animals. 3 minutes. Thank you for your help.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Peter. Okay, any other public comment? No one else was signed up, so that's it for public comment this morning. Do we have Lou on?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, Lou.
Good morning, everybody.
So she's there and she can hear us, obviously. Move on to members' comments. Any comments from the committee members? Lou, do you have anything this morning?
Nothing from me.
Okay. No members' comments. Move on to new business. Move on to presentation. The annual report. I think Adam's coming forward.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good.
All right, so, well, this is going, give you kind of the overarching concept on this. So one, we took some notes from our budget presentation, and brevity was key, so we eliminated some items. And then, thank you. Yeah, I was just trying that too.
There you go.
That'll do it, that'll help. All right, so we'll jump right in. So the annual report. This report we give every January, and it's really derived from the comprehensive plan. The whole goal is to get what trends are occurring. It informs us, not only as a committee, but on all these special projects. So while we are looking at specific zoning petitions and whatnot, this information also feeds all of these projects, from demos to the joint training to the need for Brightly and Bluebeam, and we'll get into all of those. So, jumping right in, we have our wide spread of zoning petitions. The zoning petitions, the entitlement, that's gonna be the first thing we look at. So can you do it? This is a 5-year average at the bottom. It's all about the same in terms of those numbers. So nothing really big jumping off. We'll get into each one, reclassifications, variations, conditional uses, amendments, and kind of break down what we see, open it up to your questions to see what you see. Any questions in terms of some of the specific petitions, maybe we don't have them there, but we can follow up.
Solar farms are virtually all of the conditions.
So yeah, you took my conditional use thunder. We'll touch on that, but yeah, I believe it's 18 conditional uses that are solar farms, purely solar farms. So there's an additional 5 that are not. So that's certainly a trend. We'll jump right in. So reclassifications will be the first one. So entitlement. When we look at this, what the comp plan asks us to do is show you, the board, how many acres and what type of zoning districts people are trending to. We don't have, our numbers have gone down. We just, whether that's because people haven't required needed reclassifications for whatever their particular use is, or because the UDO is working, because the classifications that are in there are appropriate. But there's several different triggers in terms of why people would do this. One of the common classic ones is going to be the A1 to A2. So they can break off the farmstead, sell that, keep that separate from the farm itself. And so you'll see that represented with the A1s, the A2s, 3 of those, and then we see a miscellaneous with the B3s, R1s, and a lot of those kind of individual one-offs. And then we do that not only numerically, but then in terms of acreage. A very low percentage of acreage, so 125 acres have been reclassified out of the 287,000 that we have. So we're not changing too much, but we have some transitions. Last year we were at 97, to give you the comparison. Variations, so the underlying zoning works, but maybe the proposal doesn't really fit on the lot, or maybe there's just something that they want waived. Setbacks is obvious that's one of the largest ones. We only have 8 of those and 14 for the full year. So people either pick the right lot for their use, or they deal with and they come up with some other some other solution to whatever that particular regulation in the UDO that would otherwise be an impediment. But we do see them, and when people ask, we'll bring them forward, we'll coach them a little bit in terms of, here, this is what you're asking for, and try to get them through the process, and then you'll see them at the county board level. This particular petition type goes through, when they're alone, when they're just a variation request, they would go through the hearing officer. If it's paired with something else, with another type of zoning petition, then it would go through the zoning board of appeals. So you may see that MCHO versus ZBA on your board packets. And then the conditional uses, right? So 18 of those are solar farms alone. We've had, certainly that's been the trend since 2019 really, but that is by and large, the largest conditional use type. We'll get a couple of other ones, earth extraction. So those are gravel pits. Outdoor landscape businesses with outdoor storage are pretty common at 2. Reception facilities we've seen kind of come down a little bit as the market, I wouldn't say saturated, but the market has them here. We would see those in 2018, 2019 pretty heavily. And then off-site services businesses. So this would be a roofing contractor or any sort of operation that would be run out of their home, but otherwise kind of should be in the municipalities. So those are the 3 main petition types that you'll see. Some of the other indicators, when we look at the call for this report, it just asks for what kind of zoning petitions, variations, conditional uses. But as it's evolved, we've kind of looked at what are the other peripheries. So buildability letters. People are purchasing properties and they want a little bit of confidence that this property can be used how they hope it can be used, how they intend. So they get this baseline underlining zoning reference that gives them the starting point to say, all right, have these conversations with either an attorney or with our planning division that'll say, yes, from here you can go here, here, or here. And it gives them some foundation to work with. And then text amendments. So the UDO is a living, breathing document. We put it on our action plan to address items that come up, trends, whatever it might be. So having 1 amendment a year is typically from this committee, what we see. Having 2 is typically to address an issue. So this year's is rodeos. We had one earlier in the year to kind of clean up some language. So if we have 3, maybe it comes from the outside, maybe we have another issue that comes up, but as things come up, we try to kind of sweep them together and do them all at once. So those trends are 1.6 over the 5-year period is a little bit higher than maybe we anticipate, but it's very manageable. So that's the petition side of things. As we get into some of the other ease of use and operations, Freedom of Information Acts, this has been, we've always had about that 400, 450 range in terms of the number of FOIA requests. For the last several years, we've made a big push to digitize records. So scanning has been, we've got a line item in our budget. It's relatively modest, $5,000. But we've been doing it for 5, 6, 7 years to the point where we have about 10 to 15,000 records scanned every year. So we're ahead of the records that we produce. So we're able to push more and more onto our electronic record search that would save some folks the effort of going in and FOIAing records. We thought in 2020-ish, we thought that we were really making some hay and we were starting to see those numbers go down, and then 21, 22, they spiked back up. They're sinking a little bit, 355. We'd like to see that kind of either stay there or go down a little bit more. Our hope, we've gotten through a lot of our building permits. Our current permits are continuously being scanned as they get closed out. Our hope is that people, when they go to the electronic record search, are successful. And when they're successful, they'll go back to it. When they're unsuccessful, the first thing they're doing is going to call. And so maybe that's where we had some false hopes and maybe even false advertisements in terms of, hey, this is your solution. Then they go there and it doesn't work. So we hope to see that trend change. And then I've got this glorious high-density electronic shelving unit in there. That's our pizza oven. All of our permits are in there. But we are in the same transition. We're doing away with it. We don't need it. It takes up quite a bit of space. As you can see, there's some boxes in there. When we're out of balance, we need it serviced because it's wonky. But better yet is we're all going electronic. So we're trending that way, not only from our scanning and the historical records, but going forward, our Bluebeam and our SmartGov applications are allowing us to we have the ability to do everything paperless, which speeds everything up, and certainly we'll have some folks that can't. We'll accommodate that as we can, but we're kind of expanding into that and really leaning into that paperless world. So we'll touch a little bit more on that later. Compliance. We've had, I have a little demarcation there at 22, between 21 and 22 intentionally. You'll see a difference in the numbers. So our compliance numbers and our approach has changed right at that demarcation. We have a new code compliance officer, code enforcement officer. And from the get-go, changed the way we file. We changed the way we approach, changed the way we kind of talk to folks, when we can talk to them. That's reduced not only the number of files that when you look at referred to the state's attorney's office, we've seen a huge drop in that. So there's not frivolous lawsuits in what many people will maybe accuse us of. How we get there is education, is communicating, building better cases, building better investigations and better evidence to demonstrate to the homeowners that, hey, this is the rule and this is what you're doing. So it's now we can have a two-way conversation as opposed to a conversation that we try to relay information and they push back and say, I don't care. So those are tough ones. So it reduces the flames, it reduces the heat of that conversation, and we can start making progress. One of the other items that we're looking at is, and we just tracked for a full calendar, is our resolution duration. How fast from the time we figure out that this is a violation and write it up, how fast do we close it? How fast do we get compliance? And that for the year has averaged 78 days. No real conclusion there, but I just want to highlight it that it feels good to us. 3 months is a decent chunk of time. It's less than that, 90 days, but it's a starting point for us. So we're pretty happy with the way compliance is trending. Shifting to permit trends, we are higher than we've been in the past. We're at 1574 for overall permits. So that's not only building permits, but stormwater permits, temporary use permits, fireworks, you name it. So we're at 1574, slightly up from 1505 last year, which was a banner year, and our permit reviews are actually down a click. So we've issued more permits with slightly less permit reviews. And then below that is our main goal. So our goal is always 90% of the permits turned around in 10 business days, and for the second year in a row, we've achieved it. So we're at 90.13 in fiscal year 2023. So that was a very exciting piece for us. We'll figure out how to celebrate that, but until then, it's just back to work. So we'll figure that out. So maybe we can look at something with employee retention, but we'll get there. Our breakdown, FY23 is highlighted there in gray. We've got 5 years of data. And the big one that we want to highlight is the very top row. We are at our highest number, at least since I've been here in 10 years, 56 residences, 6 ancillary dwelling units, so 62 new residential units in the county. Not really holding a candle to some of the municipalities, but we're pretty damn proud of it. A couple of the other numbers on there. I know Mr. Gadameller likes us to point out the number of demos. So we've outpaced our single-family residence to demo ratio. Last year it was 43 to 22. This year it's 56 to 17. So we have got a little bit of an uptick in number of units. Service upgrades and residential alterations are really the story beyond that. Everything else has been pretty much not run-of-the-mill, but consistent in terms of the numbers of building permits and other building permit types. But what people are doing is altering their house. They're doing interior alterations. Maybe there's some additions in there too, but that would be, it's just not as much as those minor interior items.
What's solar accessory?
Those are like residential solar units, so rooftops or ground-mounted solars.
Have any solar farms in there?
Solar farms are actually classified under commercial and industrial, up on right here, about the 6th line down. Those are, I think we had 8, if memory serves me, 8 permitted solar farms this year, which is a pretty high number of actual installs. I think we've had it the most in the past was 3 or 4.
Is there any way to add that line?
Individually?
Yeah.
Sure.
But not take away from what you originally had it listed at, but just a side note, here's how many.
Definitely. Yeah, you know what, in reality, subconsciously, I probably knew that. That's why I knew the number going in. Probably should have adjusted it, so yes, I will update that. All right, any other questions in particulars? Reaching the end. All right, some of the other trends that pop out. Last year, demonstrated, had a whole slide, animations, the whole bit on our transition from 6% of our online permits, or of our permits were filed online, to I think it was 80% last year. We're still right in that same ballpark at 78% of our permits are filed online. So we are we're heading in the right direction in terms of our special projects of going digital with our SmartGov application. We're currently in testing for that. We've got a couple of things that are kind of running concurrently in terms of a GIS component and then some banking and the actual accounts that would go with it. But those should all kind of blend together. Tomorrow, Stoyan is putting on one of his best demos of how to file a permit for the whole team, so we can kind of all get on the same page. So it's been a couple weeks of beta testing. Frustration, that's a fancy term I found for frustration. And it's gone well, but we need to get over that learning curve, and that's just where we're at. So it's taken a lot of staff time, and it's going to be successful, but we're just not there yet. One of the other items that I highlighted last year that we started tracking kind of intensely, whether maybe it was too intense, but we followed our estimated value of construction. And for years, we've always had it, but there's a lot of blank forms that get submitted. This year, we've kind of put a big focus on it. And we've tallied up $134 million of permitted construction work that's come in. Not all of it's been executed, because it's not one-to-one in terms of the number of permits that are applied for and closed that year. But the ones that have come in and they provide an estimate of what they're building, that's what that number's added up to. So I made the joke last year, and I kind of stand by it, that if someone's handing in that form for a permit, they're always kind of underestimating in terms of, no, not that. So what that number is for sure, we don't know. But one of the reasons we're tracking it is because when we go to SmartGov has a calculator that'll go in there that'll be based on the ICC, which they have rates of construction, and then they have coefficients that we can adjust based on our location, our areas, type of construction, all that sort of stuff. We can kind of get a comparable for if you're building a new single-family residence and it's 3,500 square feet, 2 stories, brick, whatever it might be. ICC can give you a ballpark what that would fall into, and then we'll compare that with the estimated. So we'll get another number to compare, hopefully next year. Until then. So going into 2024, we've got kind of 2 things really. One is that adaptability, evolving, recognizing that our processes are all changing. We're going digital. We're new permit review protocols, new intake protocols, new inspection protocols. everything, the way we handle money. Last year, we went cashless. This year, we'll have the opportunity and the ability not to even take checks. So it can all be online through the online portal. So there's, not to say we're gonna force people to do that, but the reality is that we're trending in a way that will be easier. It's a 24/7 operation now with that online portal. The other thing that we're gonna see is the need to educate. So we have, we're 8 days into a brand new building code. The 2021 Energy Conservation Code was adopted by the state. Every municipality has 6 months to employ it. There's some changes that are gonna come. That's kind of a big deal and it's been a kind of a loud deal throughout the state this past year as it's evolved into what it was, or divulged into what it was. So as a county, as a department, we are looking at it, and we're gonna attend trainings, and we've done a lot of the training on the actual units, on the code. We're gonna attend trainings to see how municipalities are handling it. What kind of fights, what kind of impact on construction is really the biggest thing that I see. Escalated our values. Walls may need to be thicker, foundations may need to be bigger just to support those walls. Not necessarily structurally, but just dimensionally. So there's some impacts that are coming down the pipe with that. And then in 2025, it's scheduled to have, Illinois is scheduled to release a state building code. And so come January 1st of 2025, we may all be under a Illinois building code that will drive where they want us to drive. So we'll see. But that's why education is going to be critical in our. We see it with all of our other facets in terms of compliance. It's probably the best and brightest example of it, but we're going to see it with building codes, kind of for the foreseeable future too. With that, any questions?
Got
Got a couple.
Do you have any, for the solar panels, I know you had how many acres were taken up for this and for that. Do you have it for how many farm acres were taken up for solar panels?
We do. So we do. I don't have it in here, but we do. We're a participant on the state task force, the Wind and Solar Task Force, and that was the first assignment that we did. And it was largely because that was what we did internally to kind of self-assess where we're at, what the status of the conditions are. So not only do we have that, but we have that from most municipalities participating in the IASCO group, the state zoning officials. So we can produce that and provide that for you.
And the other one, on your FOIA request, you had to know, what's the big hit that you see being FOIA'd?
You know what, it's everything. It's simple stuff from septics and what are my floor plans and can I get a site plan because I'm doing something for you guys or whatever it might be. And then we'll see a lot of neighbor inquiries, stuff that, hey, what are they doing? Or stuff to, we'll see some business inquiries. It's I don't want to say it's non-controversial typically, but it's largely predictable.
And that's where some of your IT stuff you're tying in so they can go look at it directly and not spend your labor to answer it?
Yeah, so the content isn't so daunting. It's the exercise to ensure that you have gotten and recovered every document. So if we've got something that is close to what they're asking for, you got it. It's yours. And so covering all of our bases, that's where it really gets time consuming.
And the last easy, any chance of getting this email to us?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
definitely. I finished it, a couple hours ago. So I wanted to make sure, at least the final edits. So. I didn't email it out yet.
Trial run ran good.
Right. My dog's sick of hearing it.
Anyone else have anything?
No, just
Thank you.
congratulations on that 90%
Thank you.
thing. That's huge in my book that you've done that. So 98% would be great next year.
Yeah, no, tell me about it. No, I don't get overly jumping up and down, but yeah, our folks are pretty excited about it. So I definitely.
Well, that's always been an issue since I've been on the board, and you guys have achieved it here just in the last 2 years, so congratulations, job well done.
Thank you. I will pass that along, because there's 19 people involved with that, and they'll all be excited.
Well, and it has been a big, I mean, I sat in that chair when we had a fight. It wasn't fun.
Yeah, it's
But-
huge.
Yeah, but this is, it's much easier when you're talking to the builders of the world and they go, why does it take 6 weeks to get something? It shouldn't take that. And you guys are doing a great job. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I think the reason we don't have a lot of questions is because you are doing a good job. There's not a lot of statistical aberrations up there that we got to question and wonder why. Everything seems to be moving along pretty smooth. So obviously the public's getting a lot more educated about using the online permitting and stuff, which is fantastic. So yeah, job well done, I think.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anyone else have anything?
Right.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
Thank you. I'll back up. I think I gotta come back for a couple of things.
Okay. We'll move on to the routine consent agenda. Number 7, does anyone have anything they'd like to remove from the routine consent agenda? Jim?
I want to pull the one where the amending the conditional use 7.3. And then also, I just wanted to talk, or 7.1, wanted an explanation of that one
Pull
also.
it then.
7.1 and 7.3.
Okay. Carolyn, is it your?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, and for no other reason, just to get some clarification on 7.2. I'm not opposed to it at all, but just wanted to get a little bit more information about how that came about.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll go to
Approve 7.4 and 7.5 as consent.
Okay, motion by Mr. Gadamoller for 7.4 and 7.5 on the consent agenda, seconded by Carl. Is there any discussion? Nope. We'll go to vote on those. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, 7.1.
We also
Pardon?
Lou's up there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lou.
Yes,
Did you catch all that?
I did.
Okay. And your vote on the 7.4 and 7.5?
I'm agreeable, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you, Carolyn. I know it was gonna take a little retraining. I went back
It's hard to remember.
Yeah, it is.
I move to approve 7.1.
Okay, a motion by Jim for 7.1, a second by Mr. Gadamoller. Jim, you.
I'm just
pull this?
looking for an explanation, and I'm reading through it. There's 10 members of that?
At least, yeah. Some of those members, I forget all of them offhand, but yeah, it's a kind of a mixture, and they're always kind of expanding that too. It's a mixture of counties and municipalities in that northern, between McHenry, Boone, and Winnebago counties that are on that board of trustees.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because I was confused about when they talked about the appointments.
Yeah.
I didn't see McHenry County on there, other than the appointments.
Yes, you're right. So this would get us back into the ranks. So
Okay.
yeah, pending approval, then we're back in. I mean, we have that legacy. They took our vote at the meeting in December, but they really want us to do this.
So that brings us back into it. So that was my question. I didn't understand on the appointments if we had a
Sure.
seat at the table.
Something we've done all along, it just needs to be made official again.
Correct. So we joined the land bank in 21, and it was a three-year agreement. And then once it expired, we were noticed that, hey, this has got to go before the committee and have a resolution by the county board to continue on. So we haven't exercised all of our rights and benefits yet, but we're still pushing for those properties that are abandoned and tax delinquent in terms of getting them back in the tax roll. So we've got a couple identified through the land bank. And then some other programs that are starting to come up. 2024 is a good one where they're piloting a workforce housing program for employees. So for specific employees, so that's starting to get off the ground right now.
Okay, anything else? Go to vote on 7.1, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
7.1 is passed, we'll move on to 7.2. Have a motion for 7.2, please. Moved by Carl, seconded by Carolyn. Carolyn pulled this?
Yes, I was just gonna, just some,
Oh, Lou, I'm sorry. You just gotta holler right in there, Lou.
Okay.
Thank you.
sorry, I was a little distracted because my computer.
Sorry, Carol.
No, I was waiting because I knew that was what you were trying to do, and I was a little distracted because my Wi-Fi wasn't connected. So, anyway, yeah, just a little bit of history about how this came with the tipping fees and
Yeah, so you had asked about that prior to the meeting in terms of that particular fee. I know it's the tipping fee for the waste facility on Virginia in terms of the fluctuation, or can it go up, can it go down? That I'm not sure on. I don't know, Pete, if you have any insight on that, or Scott, in terms of that particular fee?
What
The long
we
term,
collect has been going up.
that's been going up,
Right.
okay,
What we commit to MCSEEP has not.
okay, okay. So it,
right. So and the tipping fee then is obviously for tipping, putting things in there. But does part of it go? I mean, so how do we determine what amount goes towards MCSEEP? Are there other uses for that tipping fee? How does that come about?
Yeah, I think most of it's going to environmental health. We have 5-year plans that have to be commissioned. We've been paying for that out of this, other activities in environmental health. But we have been putting, what is it, 20,000?
22, yeah, it's 22 now, just under 23.
For the MCSEEP, you mean? And then, okay, because the question I have is, because I know that when we did this a couple of years ago, and we were able to move them out of wherever they were located within the county structure building, I don't know where they were. They then went, Defenders took over the cost of housing the program, right? And so my only concern is and we've seen this with other things that happen over time, when we don't increase what we're supplying. I mean, their costs of providing education, their salaries to their teachers and their subs and that sort of thing changes over time, it's going up over time. I was just curious as to how do we determine that amount, and does it ever go up to help offset some of the costs? Because we did obviously have some savings when we no longer had to house them.
I'm not going to be fast and loose with my dates here, but there was if we go back 15, 18 years, there was a grant that was secured by the Regional Office of Education and started this program of educating kids about solid waste. That when we had a change in the regional superintendent, and as that grant kind of ran out, there was, I think, a recognition that it really didn't need to be in the Regional Office of Education. It probably didn't best belong. At the same time, we saw the professionalization of our water resource plan in the Planning Development Department, so they kind of took it in there for a period of years. Then, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years ago, I saw that MCSEEP was maybe best positioned to do this, and we gave them a try, and it's worked pretty well. And I don't think anybody's really hungry to take that back on in terms of our staff, and I think MCSEEP's doing a good job of it. So to your question, when do they get more, I put that to them.
Yeah.
They're telling us what they need, and we have to reach that conclusion.
Yeah, no, and nobody's asking at this point. It was more like down the road. I mean, obviously, they haven't come in here and asked for more money. It's just more that.
It's a fair expectation at some point that if they're going to continue to deliver the program at the same level, it's going to cost more.
Correct. So
we are getting more on tipping fees. I didn't look this year, but I know last year it's going up and up and up.
Okay, yeah, just something to keep in mind so that, it is apparently very successful, and I know they're trying to get back their numbers now that they're back in the schools and increase the number, the exposure to the amount of schools that they go to and that sort of thing, so.
We have a requirement, and I'm blanking on what's that called?
NPDS.
Yeah,
program.
NPD, yeah, we have an educational requirement
Right.
within there. This allows us to check that box.
That
So
position,
it's not all, we're not all being benevolent by giving them these dollars.
Right.
They're helping us.
Right, absolutely. Okay.
Go.
Tipping fees, when COVID first hit in 20, I can tell you that everybody in the world because we're all stuck at home cleaning the garage out. It almost broke the system down. They literally had so much stuff coming in, they couldn't get it out. So I'm sure our tipping fees are not what they were in 2020, but they were having a very difficult time getting all the garbage.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Okay.
Yeah.
And thanks for the conversation.
Anything else on that? Go to vote on 7-2 then. Joe?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes to that.
Lou?
Put Lou's name, I'll put Lou's name right there. Lou?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We should do that. We should.
Chairman, we did a voice vote for the routine consent agenda. We actually needed a roll call vote for those.
Okay, for the consent agenda.
Correct. For 7.4 and 7.5.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we're spending money. Okay.
Yep.
So could we have a motion to reconsider 7.4 and 7.5? Is that what we need?
No, you just need to call a roll
Do
call.
call a roll
Yeah,
call
yeah.
vote for them? I'll take Mr. Godemoeller's advice on that. Roll call vote for the consent agenda, which is 7.4 and 7.5. John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Lou?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Got me retrained here. Appreciate that. Keeping me on my toes this morning, guys. Okay, so we're at 7 point.
I'll move to approve 7.3 so that we can talk
Okay.
about it.
7.3, moved by Mr. Godemoeller, seconded by Carolyn. Okay, Jim, you pulled that?
Yeah, I understand why and what this is about. Again, I'm still opposed to giving indefinite, even though it's a state law. I'm opposed to it. But my main question here is they just amended the state law here for the drainage, and they didn't do the bonding, but they did, what else did they do? They did two things, they amended it.
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay, well, they just amended two of them, and I wanna know if all of these, if it applies to all of them, since we passed them without that. If
Oh, I thought you were talking about
They-
the state law. Are you talking about the conditional uses?
No, the state law on the solar farms basically was quiet on the time frame. It didn't take into any effect on the drainage of the surrounding properties or those properties and the surrounding properties. So the surrounding landowners, if they busted up tile, there was no. So they passed that, they amended that, and the governor just signed that here last month. So my question is does all of that apply to these farms?
They would, as far as I understand them. So however that law transitions, the amendments that are made here don't necessarily go in conflict or even touch on the items that were revised in that trailer bill. The biggest one that may come of it is the expansion of 45 days to 60 days to allow for that public hearing. But everything else wouldn't touch these 9 that are in here.
So, and I know this isn't the topic, so future topics, I believe we need to, because of this subject here, this resolution, I believe we should discuss changing our UDO and removing the county or even voting on these. But that's my piece on this today. I just wanted to make sure we were covered on those text amendments or those amendments of
That bill?
that bill.
Sure.
So the amendments, Jim, just to clarify, so the amendments, like I know.
Means they can't flood a neighboring farm, they have to fix the drainage.
I thought
if I understand it
that
correctly.
was already in there, that they had to fix the drain tiles.
And nothing to do.
No, there wasn't.
They didn't do anything.
They just passed.
We've been passing stuff that they have nothing, no ramifications if they screw up an entire region of drainage.
Oh, because I was reading the one on Surya, and that was prior to the change. That's why, because that had it in there about the drain tiles and everything else that was confusing me.
Right, that's a
That was
very, that's a different, case type, because that
And
one
that's the
was,
one-
the big piece was the drainage issue and
Right.
the watershed impacts. So that one was probably very clearly stipulated in terms of what type of measures need to be either employed or used to protect in the long term.
That's right, that's why it got confusing, because that's the one that's coming before, that was before the ZBA, which will be coming, that we're voting on this month. Is this mega plant or Surya, was Surya.
Well, do we even need to vote on it because this changes that?
This one does not. So these are Surya, unless it snuck in there, but it's pre it was applied for prior to that state law going into effect. So they've come back with an amendment to their application, but it's not, they don't have the benefits of these applicants here, if you will. They're not
That's why
involved
that's
with this
separate.
particular piece because these applicants before you came in under that state law. After after it was passed, they applied, and so that would apply to them.
So clarify, these, the new state, the revision for the state law will apply to these, or no?
They will apply to all, they already apply to these.
Okay, so they are, the
This
new revisions
corrects-
corrects
yeah.
the water.
This stems from a recommendation from the state's attorney's office to correct that, really pending litigation. So this will correct that issue for those applicants and their attorneys to carry forward as if they were approved without conflict.
But to clarify, the new trailer bill
Just a new
stuff
trailer bill.
is not retroactive to any of these, is it? Or,
As far as I understand it, it is, but
It
it
is.
doesn't conflict with the issues that are at hand with these
No,
conditions.
no,
of
it's
use,
just-
Unless
it's
I'm
just
missing
different.
something that you're
it
seeking.
doesn't conflict with these, but just sort of on a different subject, so I'm clear, is it that new trailer bill language, is that retroactive to the ones that have already applied? Or
The ones
that will be
that
applying in
are,
the future?
as I understand it, coming from the state's attorney's office, that those would apply, that trailer bill applies to anything that's covered under that existing law. If it was applied for before that law, then it's a completely different set of circumstances.
So it applies to all the
But
ones.
if it applied under that law, they reap the benefits of it.
Okay,
Now, it hasn't been tested, but this is, having only been there for, I think, 45 days or so, but these amendments aren't being made to modify anything that was in that trailer bill.
yeah, I get that, I just was wondering when they took effect or whatever, but if you, Jim, go ahead.
So I think a more appropriate question for me then is, do any of these have a situation where the drainage is not taken care of, possibly? Yeah, no, Marengo,
Yeah, nothing
the
jumps
big
out.
one in Marengo, they
Yeah,
agreed to
nothing.
that one.
Nothing jumps out. I would compare it to that Surreal one. That was the big issue with that particular application, is that it was in this kind of depressional watershed. And not that it was precluded, but they have a different set of regulations that they have to adhere to and maintain throughout the construction of that project. But these don't have that same level of conflict, at least that we recognize at this point.
So the law would not apply, the trailer bill would not apply to any of these if a neighbor came back and said, they've blocked my drainage. My
I'm sorry,
land
I
is
believe it
flooded."
does.
Yeah,
I believe it does
You
apply
say
to
it
it.
does apply,
Yeah, I believe it does.
then I'm okay.
Yeah, that's what I was trying.
But that's the information that I've been passed.
And that came from the state's attorney's office.
Right, in our conversation with Norm, that would apply.
That might
But
be
unless,
something we'd clarify, or are you calling it clarified?
certain, yeah.
Are you calling it clarified now?
What's that?
You say it is clarified from the state's attorney's office, and that's how we should be
Once
looking
was
at it.
good, twice is better. We can
Okay.
always ask again, make sure, or get it in writing. Yeah.
Anything else on 7.3 that we need right now? Okay, Go to vote, do a voice vote on this one. John,
Yes.
Jim,
I'm gonna say a no.
Carl,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Yes?
and I'll vote no.
Lou?
Luke?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So that will go to the county board. Anything else we need there? Don't see it. We're going on to old business.
Spongy Moths.
Here we go.
I do like their hand.
I think, Kathy, next time we have somebody calling us, put their name thing right
I like their
there.
trap.
And then you can put a little light by it. Just buzz.
It's our turn.
Good morning, Scott.
Good morning. For the record, Scott Hartman, Deputy County Administrator. And I know that you've been anxiously awaiting this item on the agenda, and you've been waiting for many, many months for this point in time. I think we are actually at a point where the county has enough information to determine what role, if any, it should play in the spongy moth suppression issue. Since spring of last year, you've heard from affected property owners, subject matter experts, you've analyzed data, you've seen information related to spongy moths and various treatment applications, including aerial spray of BTK. And I think we've put enough information together to come to a decision point for the county.
Okay, Scott, sorry to interrupt, but when we go through this morning and with your discussion on this, where's our end goal here for me and for the rest of the committee members is that at the end of this discussion today, we're going to be looking at putting some type of resolution together for the next meeting? Are we to that point, or?
Very likely, if the committee decides it wants to proceed, what I would envision is a resolution, at the minimum, to be an emergency appropriation for funding if you choose to contribute funding for it. Aside from that, it's really a commitment of staff time just to facilitate a program. I don't know if there's really county board action that needs to be required. However, if you want the full county board to endorse whether or not it should be involved in the spongy moth suppression, then a resolution simply to that effect could be appropriate.
At the end of the discussion today, we should be getting, or asking questions or getting enough information to say what the next step is and make a move on this at the next meeting.
That's correct.
Or not make a move.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. A couple of things before I want to bring up Andrew Hamilton, Assistant State's Attorney, who did the research of the liability question. At the last meeting, you had committee asked, is there liability if the county engages in a BTK aerial spraying program? Mr. Hamilton researched that for the county. Before I begin, though, I just want to really give a public thank you to all of our citizen scientists who over the past year have helped the county understand this issue, bring it to the table, help collect data, go through the really unpleasant task of counting the moths that were caught in the traps, and I've heard some stories about that, and it doesn't sound like a very pleasant way to spend time, but they did because this issue is so important to them, and they were willing to contribute. We have a lot of participation from our citizens, from the Conservation District, to really help the county understand what is the issue, how big is it, what is the scope, and that got us to this point today. So I want to make sure we do thank you to all our citizen scientists, Mr. Vanderspool included, and with that,
It's Kathy Johnson, was it too?
Nancy Johnson from the Illinois
Nancy,
Department of
okay,
Agriculture.
yeah.
She has been
She contributed
my
a lot to the
guide,
last
and
meeting, and I forgot to thank her for that, so that can be passed along, or?
she's very likely listening to this meeting, but she has been working with me and supporting me and facilitating all of this to this point in time. But I think, that whole year, when we went into the spring, we said, let's understand this issue. Today, I think we have a good understanding of this issue, and that's going to be one of the next steps. All right, park that. Mr. Hamilton, if you can answer the question that they had on a high level, what is the county's potential liability? Turn it over to you.
Certainly. Good morning, committee. My name is Assistant State's Attorney Andrew Hamilton. I've met most of you. I'm going to give a high-level analysis, legal analysis on the situation. I have the State's Attorney's Office has drafted an opinion on the matter. I do wish to caution the committee, for the record, that we are waiving any attorney-client privilege, and if specific questions are needed, we should move into executive session. That being said, The State Attorney's Office has analyzed the situation, and based on two proffered actions that the county would take in this, the application of the subject pesticide, that being the county itself is a direct involvement in hiring and spraying the pesticide. That action, the State's Attorney's Office estimates that the chances of legal liability would be very low to minimal in terms of damages. If the county merely provides the pesticide and does not actively participate in the spraying or anything like that, almost zero to minimal liability. That being said, is there any specific questions I can answer?
Okay, don't see any questions. I do not have any. I think that sums it up very well for us.
I can see it in your face.
No, but just to clarify, so if we take action, you're basically saying that even if we provide financial support, there's little to no.
Little to none.
Is what you're anticipating.
I have done some legal research on the subject pesticide. To be honest, I haven't seen any cases involving this pesticide, which is good for us. I was actually kind of surprised because we've seen lawsuits of many different varieties.
So if you have a situation, one of the blocks that we're looking at has two potentially no non-participants, which then they would be actually impacted by spraying, obviously, because they're within that block. So what kind of obligation do we owe them if they decide they don't want to participate?
Well, we would have to tell the county, if they do actively participate in the spraying, would have to do everything they could to minimize pesticide drift. And there's a fancy term for it. One moment. It's called integrated pest management strategies, and based on working with our very educated citizens in this matter and our own retained experts, if we have anybody, we would just have to make sure we're doing as best we can to make sure that there's no pesticide drift.
If I can speak, in that situation, that block in particular, the property owners banded together last year and engaged Hendrickson's Flying Service to spray. There was one property in particular that was adamantly opposed to it. They refer to that affectionately as the donut hole within their spray area. Hendrickson's Flying Service was aware of that and did precautions to stop the spray prior to the property line because there's going to be a certain degree of drift, right? So they've done this long enough. This isn't the first time that situation has happened, and so they know enough based on all the conditions and how they're applying that they can avoid it. You know, they stop short to minimize that drift around the property. So there are things that you can do to mitigate that, and in that case, as I understand it, the participating residents had a good conversation with the non-participant and basically came to understanding that, you know, they would do this. The non-participant would just kind of stay indoors for a while until the spray settled down, and there was no issue thereafter. All right, so the first question we were to answer today was a question of liability. Seeing no further questions, I assume that has been successfully resolved. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Committee.
The second question that came out of December's meeting was, what does this cost? That was a bit of a challenge because unless you have specific blocks identified, it's really hard to get specific pricing. When the state engages in this program, they were able to identify large blocks and really aren't too concerned about the public property versus private property. They have a greater latitude to apply this at the state than we do. So when they can define a block, they can be much more determinant on what they're going to do and get better pricing. You know, the county is approaching this by saying that unless the property owner wants to participate, we should not continue. Good case in point with the non-participants we just talked about. So that really limits what can be done and how we can approach this at this point in time without getting specific consent from property owners. So working with Hendrickson's Flying Service, which I'll point out is, to our knowledge, and looked into this quite a bit, is the only aerial service that provides BTK application, because it is a niche operation. Hendrickson had provided a tiered pricing, and this tiered pricing is based on so much acreage and the cost per acre. So the more acreage you have, the lower the cost. You basically have an economy of scale. And this would, my understanding is this tier pricing is based on an aggregate amount of acreage. So if you have several blocks that total up to these tiers, then you get that pricing. And my understanding is this also includes the BTK, which is the pesticide that we would provide. It's a bacteria that we would provide. So you have to buy that. That's kind of expensive. So and it's applied to about a half gallon per acre. So there's not a whole lot of it, but they have to buy a certain quantity of it for the county or for property owners. They got to spread that cost over. So that's why you have an economy of scale. The more acreage you have, the more you can spread the cost of the product out. So the tier pricing is presented here. Under 50 acres, $200 per acre. Up to over 400 acres, it would be $60 per acre. So it's tiered within that respect. Now, when you look at treatment blocks, there's a couple things you have to keep in mind. First off, the candidate blocks should be 10 continuous acres. Now, they can actually do something smaller. They can work through with it, but ideally, you want 10 contiguous acres. So you can't do an acre here and then hopscotch to an acre over there. When they fly, they need to start the spray, cover an area, and come back. So we need to make sure our blocks are crafted to have that efficiency. Secondly, the collection data to identify the hotspots, we wanted to see in triple-digit moth counts. And included in the packet was a map of all the traps that were placed. And you can see the numbers. I do want to point out on the triple digits that MCSEEP properties, the Conservation District properties, many of those had triple-digit moth counts. However, they are not included in the block consideration that's proposed, and we'll talk about in a few minutes, because of their no-spray policy. But, and on the map, I took the liberty of highlighting the Conservation District traps in green, so you can see how they're spread out. MCCD does have this information, does have the moth counts. They will be looking at this again. Whether or not they change their positions to be determined. But as it stands today, they still maintain their no-spray policy. So even though you have some high counts throughout the county, for Conservation District properties, they obviously would not be considered for our block consideration. And once you craft the blocks based on the counts, there's a couple things that need to be done. First off, as we talked about, property owner consent. If the property owners do not consent to this, then county should, my recommendation is the county should not be doing it. We shouldn't be spraying on people's property if they don't want it. Secondly, just because the moth counts are high, doesn't mean that there are the spongy moths there. We need to verify egg masses, which you can do this time of year. In fact, that's what the industry is doing right now, is they're going out, they're looking at trees, they're looking to see the spongy moth egg masses, which we know they're the whitish masses on the trunks of trees, or if I want firewood, or really anything. If there are spongy moths egg masses there, then you know that that's going to be a spongy moth population. That's important because the traps have a certain pheromone and they attract spongy moths in. So you may get spongy moths from outside the area that are attracted in and go into this trap. So you may have a high count, but is that really indicative to a resident population in that hotspot? So that's why it's important to verify. What we presented are blocks that show potential hotspots, but that verification and property owner consent is the critical next step. So with that, taking all that into consideration, there are 4 identified potential hotspots that should be further reviewed. And I'm going to refer to this map that you have a copy of and that was included in the packet of the 4 potential blocks. Block 1 is that area northeast of Oringo. This is, if you recall, Ms. Galalio had approached you, Susan Galalio and her husband had talked about the spongy moths with her and her neighbors. That is actually, I call it the Woodcliff Drive block. And they engaged in spraying on their own, at their own cost, which was pretty expensive last year to address their trees. So that's block 1. Based on the numbers, this is something that we should verify for a spray program this year. Secondly is block number 2. In essence, this is really around the Fleming Road, Hidden Lane area and Bull Valley. This, in fact, Nancy Johnson had described this as, it looked like December and July with their oak trees. They were greatly impacted. This is something that when we did the call for traps, we had our citizen scientists ask for traps. They knew they had an issue, and the numbers were really incredibly high. As you can see, we have 1,318 moths in a trap. That's pretty substantial. That is a pretty big block as well, based on the devastation, further review would need to go into that, but we know that that was clearly a hot spot. Block number 3, I'm going to say is Mr. Vanderspoel's neighborhood. The number there of 100, there's actually conservation district numbers that aren't on here, which is just adjacent to it, which are in triple digits. But based on the reports, verification should take place on those properties for Mr. Vanderspoel and his neighbors in his neighborhood to consider that as a potential spray block. The fourth one is actually in Johnsburg. This is, I refer to it as Old Oak Drive and Sterling Drive. And this is an interesting piece of property. Based on the data, it's clear that there's a hotspot. I apologize, I should have shared my screen, which I'm going to do so now. And because this is in the report for the blocks. Block 2, this is Fleming Road, pretty substantial area. Block 3, Mr. Vanderspoel's neighborhood, including this large parcel, which once again further investigation needs to be done. Fantastic, thank you, sir. So block 4 is a really interesting piece of property. You may be more familiar with this as county board members than I am, and represent this district. But the counts were high in this area, so further verification should be performed to see if there's a substantial spongy moth population in here. There are 2 others that are under review. First off is just west of Hebron. This is Alden Road. This orange road. In this area, I've asked Nancy Johnson to give me the specific locations of the state trails because it did have very high counts. I'm not sure exactly where they are, so that would be a possible contender. This is close to conservation district property, so we need to see where a hotspot exists if one does exist. So that's under further review as a potential treatment block. And then the 5th one to watch is not on this map, but we had a resident from Spring Grove, basically on the Applewood Lane area, had called up and said, spongy moths are pretty bad. Can you put us on the list? So there really wasn't data that shows that was a hotspot, but I have on the overall all traps placed list the word monitor, and that's something that if the county were to proceed, we should take a look at. So that represents the 4 potential treatment blocks that I recommended, the 5th one under review. An overall total acreage of 575 acres. That would, if every property owner participates, if all the acreage is included, that would put us in the lowest tier for pricing. I say us as being a general term, however, the program would take shape. And just for purposes of cost and scope, at $60 an acre for everything all included is about 28,500 acres.
So you,
or 5,000.
maybe I heard you wrong, Scott. Did you say, I see 475 here, I thought I heard 575. I just wanted to clarify, did you have those that under review properties is not on this list? But
That's correct. That is not included under on this list. These are only the 4
do we know
blocks.
how many acres those are at all or not yet?
I'm sorry?
Do we know how many acres those?
We do not, because I'm not sure what specific properties would be included.
Okay.
But just of the 4 that are shown, if all are participating, it would be 475 and put whatever program or pricing into that lowest tier.
Scott, has anyone approached doing it for the pricing in 3 ways? 1, a portion shared by the homeowners, because a lot of these are homeowners. 2, have we reached out to the communities, villages or cities, saying, hey, can you cough up some money, which would then lower our cost by the two factors, residents, the villages, then we don't have, so much the brunt instead of paying, picking up the tab 100%.
So to the first question, that is under the county's discussion. Does the county participate or just say we'll facilitate pricing, let the homeowners, if they choose to do it, take advantage of that economy of scale pricing that we would get, or the county could choose to contribute and you can contribute out. That hasn't been determined. Hopefully we'll get some better direction today.
Is that even a legal thing you can do, is have the municipality, residents, and county? I don't know.
So coordination or facilitating a program, could be a role, whether it's just with the private property owners or with the municipality. All the properties that we're talking about are private property. So, that was something that the municipalities would need to consider. Some of these are unincorporated, such as at Block 1. It's all unincorporated McHenry County. And then, so we would need to take that second step. We have it. Now, early in the program, when we did the call for traps, we reached out to our municipal partners, we reached out to our park districts, and asked if they wanted to help us collect data. We had park districts participate. I don't recall any municipalities. There may be a couple of municipalities that participated, and I don't believe, I'll have to check to see if Bow Valley was a participant in that. So, but whether or not they would participate in the cost is to be determined, and that could be a next step.
Go ahead, Caroline, you got something?
I just had a quick question, so just as we discussed, so when you are looking at the different blocks, Block 1 was 4, can you just verify the count? So you said Block 3 was, basically the count was 100, but I know that there's conservation district sites nearby, but each block seems to have a count that you're attributing to the block, right?
Only on the traps. Just
On the trap, and I understand that that's verification is what's the next step.
Right.
So, but just for the blocks. So we have Block 1 was 498.
Block 1 was.
Or the traps.
Over
28.
What are you basing?
So 498 on the map, the math count, 498 is the only number that shows us, but the counts were substantially high.
Okay.
But 498, I think, is enough that would be considered. We can get the specific data. It just doesn't show because the traps are all jumbled together. But they had really, really high counts.
Right, so I know it's high counts and verification, because you can high counts and then come this year, there may be not that many egg masses there, or there could be a lot of them, it just depends.
That's correct.
So I guess what would be good information is what was the total count represented in that block? Because I mean, at some point, part of it too, in addition to verification, is that where's our cutoff point? Because if this is less than what was really there, so what's the count in Block 3? You show 100, but perhaps it was higher than that.
So at this point, the moth count only gets us to focus in on potential blocks.
Correct,
So
I understand that.
now-
So, but my point being, Block 3 says 100.
Yes.
So, which could be considered high or low, depending on what your perspective is. And if you're saying that that's not necessarily representative of the total number in the trap, is there a way to get that number as kind of a comparison between areas?
That was actual number of moths that were pulled out of that particular trap. But like I said, the moth count only gets us to this point. Step 2 is egg mass verification. Because there could be moths that were drawn into that trap from other areas, and it could have a skewed number. We don't know. All it does is says, okay, this identifies a potential treatment block. Now, the next step, which is from this point moving to March, is let's look at the trees, physically verify whether or not there are egg masses there. So all it does is helps us hone in on where we should verify.
Correct, but I'm just trying to identify what's that number? What number triggers that search? And I understand that each block has different amount of acreage, so that's going to be how many, you would average that over the number of acres that it was kind of applying to. But I'm just like, and that's part of the discussion, I'm just throwing it out there, I'm not coming up with an answer right now, but part of the discussion, especially if we start to develop a policy going forward, has to be, what's that trigger point? To even go look, because you've got a lot of traps out there, right?
There are. So the trigger point, triple digits, so 100 is triple digits. The conservation district just to the southwest of that had well over 100 too. That number's not reflected on this map. So that's telling me that based on that, it's probably a candidate for review. And then as you can see with these images, I wouldn't look at just the property. If there was like one isolated grove of oak trees and then there was really nothing around it, I don't know if that necessarily would constitute a block because you wouldn't have 10 contiguous acres. So step 2 is ensuring that we have a sizable parcel. These have triple digit counts and are sizable that you could have 10 contiguous acres in a block. If it's a quarter acre, you know, if the trap has 1,000 moths, but it's only a quarter acre on a parcel, we wouldn't spray that. I mean, that's you know, you need to really make it worthwhile. You need to have, you know, the aerial spray be able to turn on the sprayers, travel, what they would use prop wash from the helicopters to push it into the tree and move on. So you have to meet a certain number of criteria. Just because the numbers may be high, and I'll give you a good example. In the southeast portion of the county on the All Chaps Place map, there's 560, and it's highlighted in crimson.
It's what?
It's highlighted.
Yeah, so that is, you know, that's by Lake Clarny. Now, Lake Clarny, that had a lot of conservation district property, that's not what's here. That 560 acres, the 560 count is here. So really, it does not constitute enough for a treatment block. So just because numbers are high, doesn't mean it really is, you know, we can efficiently or effectively spray it. Now, what's important to note about when you consider spray blocks, you can treat a small area, but you lose its effect because two things. Number one, spongy moths, caterpillars, they have legs, so they move. Secondly, they can also do what's called ballooning. So basically, they put out a silk thread, the wind will carry them. So if you focus and spray a small area, in essence, the industry is going to tell you it's a waste because you spray within 7 days, the BTK is gone, but you can have bigger caterpillars from the surrounding area make their way back in. And so you really achieve nothing. So when you look at these larger contiguous blocks, you could have enough of an area where you can impact it, and then spongy moths can accroach. It's called the edge effect. So when you spray them, spongy moths will come back in. They move, and they'll come back into the area you've already treated. And once they're, you know, past the second instar, which are, you know, once they're about, let's say, 1 inch long, BTK is not as effective. But at that point in time, those caterpillars could move. They could find other oak trees. And so that's why you need to focus on larger parcels, because you can really eliminate or really impact it. It's called the edge effect. So when you spray, at that edge, where you stop spraying, picture a certain area is going to be infiltrated again with spongy moths. So that's why you need a substantial parcel to do it for this to be effective. A small little parcel, you know, you can spray it, but that, you know, it doesn't mean that spongy moths won't come in, you know, within a month and impact the oak trees.
Just a few questions.
Good, John.
So 2 and 3 are in Bull Valley.
That's correct.
Does the village of Bull Valley mind that we're going into the village of Bull Valley to do this?
Well, that has not been, and I think Mr. Kaminsky asked a similar question about outreach to them. Mayor of Bull Valley was, in fact, he springboarded the
village president.
Yeah, excuse me, thank you very much. You know, the call for traps. We realized we had to do some education on what a trap is and what a trap does. It doesn't trap them and catch them and get rid of the population, just for data collection.
Right.
But Bull Valley was certainly engaged in this last year. The residents in this area, Mr. Vanderspool included, but really the residents along Fleming Road were greatly impacted. They're well aware of this. These are private property owners. We certainly would want to reach out before we do a spray program to let the municipality know that if this is going to move forward and the county had a role in it, what our role is and what we're doing. So that would be a next step, to have that communication and outreach.
You had mentioned that, thank you to all the volunteers with the traps. Did the volunteers, did they count their own traps?
Some did.
So, you know, a scientist or the state didn't count them?
The state counted some, yes. Yeah, so it was,
What percentage?
I can find out.
I'd be curious to know because
So,
it interests me very much.
so this data, and I didn't provide with this communication, but at the last meeting, I provided, there were 4 maps of the counts. There was the citizen scientist counts, the Illinois Department of Agriculture traps, the MCCD traps, and then this map, all traps combined. So I could refer you to that, and you can see.
Yeah, then we could kind of see.
Yeah, right, and, using the collective of those 3 data points, that's how we arrive at these blocks. So the question is, how accurate are those citizen scientists moth counts? I think there was certain, trust that went into that, but there's certain, validation that's going to go into it as well. But I think, but the whole point is, just because it's identified as a block, without that next step of verifying egg masses, does not mean it's a candidate for spraying.
The 2 non-participants, or the people that don't want their spray, do they constitute 10 acres, or we're going to be able to not spray theirs, or they're going to get it anyway, or how's that?
They're about 1.5 acre lots.
So they don't count in that. They're under 10 acres, we wouldn't block that.
Right, they're included in the aggregate total. One was adamantly opposed from what I understand, whether or not after going through it last year, it might change. I don't know. The other one, from what I'm understanding from the residents, they just didn't understand it, or so, but maybe, they might have a different story. So I included them because any outreach, and that outreach would be, and as I outlined, a letter to the property owners saying, this is something that we've identified, would they be willing to participate? They may have a willingness to participate this year, so I wanted to include their acreage. And then we can talk about, I think there's scenarios of attrition, because we know not everybody's going to participate, or if there's a cost component to them, they may not want to cover the cost. So we need to then figure out what possible attrition we have in our blocks. And what would that look like for a program? Because as you lose acreage, you lose that economy of scale. In fact, there is a risk, and it's not on here, but what if you have a majority of property owners in any given block not participate, and you're under that 10 acres? Does it even make sense at that point in time? And that's something that would need to be further verified.
Can I just follow up on that, just to clarify? So you said how many acres were the because I know Jim has a question.
So
How many acres represent the 2 non-participating?
from what was represented to me, they were 2 of the subdivision lots at 1/4 acre. I'm sorry, 1.5 acres each.
1.5 each?
Yep.
Okay, so about 3 acres.
Good, Lou?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I think that Carl's comment about cost sharing where we can is important, and where there's municipalities, even homeowners, that can be a part of bearing the cost of this project, and we do our part, then I think that is a reasonable expectation to have. And there's got to be some way that the cost per acre, I mean, if you have 2 acres and somebody has 15 that we can fairly do that. How soon do we have to make this decision?
So we will need direction, hopefully this meeting, as to whether or not the county wants to proceed in verifying these blocks. That work takes place, and the industry uses January, February through March to establish truly what their treatment blocks are going to be, whether it's at state level or. So we'll need to get going. The first step would be if the county chooses to proceed, because you could say, tell me right now, no interest, and we can close the file and move on. Or if the county wants to proceed, then we would need to send, I would recommend we send a letter to all the property owners identified in these 4 treatment blocks, really that ask them if, first off, if they can assist with the egg verification. Secondly, if they would not, to allow us access to the property to do egg mass verification. And thirdly, get a certain understanding if they would be willing to participate in the program. If there is a willingness to contribute costs from the county standpoint, we can represent that. If there's not, we can leave that open, and then the county board can ultimately make that decision. But that should be done, I would say, for the rest of this month into February. To get that consent, we need to verify the egg masses. Spraying, just so you know, will usually take place anywhere between April and May. And that's driven by a variety of different conditions. And they're based on other environmental factors, and there's indicators that they'll use to determine when they spray based on this region. But regulatory steps that need to be done, Hendrickson's Flying Service will need to submit to the FAA a congested area flight plan. Whether or not this would qualify as a congested area or not, they would need to make a determination and submit that. And that may take up to 6 weeks for the FAA to respond. So we have that lead time. Secondly, we would need to submit our filing into the EcoCat system, which basically says we are going to participate in this program, spraying it, do an environmental assessment. And that's a routine process that, but we would need time to do that. So we need to know, I would say by March, what blocks we're going to do. But today we need to know, are we going to do anything? And if so, what would the county like to do?
Hey, Joe?
I would say, here's where I'm at with it. I would say absolutely go verify it. We've got to find out if there's anything for us to do. As far as cost sharing, with private owners, I'd be willing to share half. With municipalities, I'd put in a third. That's where I would.
My question with municipalities is, do we have time? If we're talking about spraying in April and March, and this has to go to the municipality and go to their board meeting,
Which is why we need to get them on board now, not wait until.
Oh, we can't wait. Even do we have time if we do it now? And as to whether we would condition it with the municipality participating or not, just in case. I mean, if they don't, then we say we're not going to do it.
Well, it's just like private owners for me, though. When I look at private owners, if none of the private owners are interested, what are we doing?
Well, I agree the private owners should participate and participate financially too.
Yeah. So I think you turn to the municipalities and say, look, we clearly identified a problem in your neighborhood. Are you interested? This is the only solution we know of. If you want to use it, great, we'll help you. If you don't, see you later.
Put a mathematical number on participation, get the counts, be prepared to do it if everybody's in line, but not necessarily do it unless it all falls in place. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, on the note, block one, wasn't this their third year of their infestation? And didn't they spray last year?
They did spray last year.
So we may not have block one to consider at all anyway.
Once again, egg mass verification will be the telltale.
Right. So, yeah, that one, but I agree with Joe, I would support this and
Let's find out if we need it.
let's find out and because time constraint is Larry's point is very well.
It's critical right
Can I
now.
respond? We have things in motion. We're far enough along that, can we do something in April, May? Yes, we are proceeding along to do that. When we first talked about this issue in March, it was too late in the season, obviously, to do anything. But I think we're on a good course right now. And I think that was the whole intent. Collect the data last year, determine what the county does, if anything, this year, and I think we are at the place that we need to be right now.
Okay, could I just hold everything for a second, because I didn't quite, Joe, could you repeat what you had online there for me, please?
Do what we have to do to verify now.
Verify now.
Because we got to find out, whether this is
ASAP, yeah.
With private ownership, I would be willing to share half the cost, so that we would pay for half and the private ownership would pay for the other half. With municipalities, I think we ought to be paying a third. They ought to be kicking in something too. And I wouldn't want.
So if it's private in the county, if it's private in the county, we go 50-50.
Yeah.
And if it's in the municipality, and the municipality wants to do.
A third is what I'm thinking.
I would suggest that we let Scott move forward as though we are going to bear the responsibility for this project so that he can take the next steps as quickly as possible and not have to wait to come back to get our approval, and then continue to take a look at the cost sharing portion of this, depending on who participates, but those first steps that need to be done, I think it's important that we let Scott move forward to do whatever he needs to do to make the project work or not. I don't want him to have to come back to us, not do something because he needs, our approval. He's been pretty clear about what he needs to do, and I think we should vote to approve that and move that forward. And then I'd like to see, based on participants, what is the cost look like? And we don't know that right now.
Well, Lou, and maybe you don't have it in front of you, but we do have a chart of what the costs would be if we did all.
No, I do have that. I did
Okay.
see that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, but to the point of, we're trying to, as a committee, I believe, first off, confirm that if we're gonna do anything, and if we are, then definitely Scott needs to move forward.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
and I think we're getting the feeling that, yes, we do wanna do something. So your point's well taken that, yeah, we will move forward on it with Scott's work. So, Jim, did you have some?
Shouldn't we just move this forward to the county board as a discussion to make sure that they, as a whole, would agree to spend this money? The 28,000 was way lower than I expected you to come back. I expected this to be $80,000 to $100,000. I mean, it's definitely economies of scale.
And should we put a limit on it and just not say 50% up to a certain dollar amount?
Yeah, and throw it to the board and say, let's do it, because time, you can't screw around with this for 2 months.
Well, I guess I would disagree about going to the board, because I think it would get, there's just so many variables that we've discussed time and time
And
again.
what if they don't want to do it at that point? After they go through all these efforts and they say, we don't want to spend that money?
Yeah, I think as a committee, we need to be the one fine tuning this, because if it goes to the board, it's
I'm
just
okay either way.
start.
Can I build up to that?
Carl, wanted to speak
Oh.
first, please?
Two quick things, what you were mentioning about the municipalities, isn't there a way that, Scott, you can make a phone call or a note saying, hey, this is kind of what we like, would you be willing to take up a third if it's, third? You have that data, if they say, hey, no, we ain't gonna, put any money in, you already know it. And then taking a look at your map, Lake County, Kenosha County, along the borders, those were some high numbers. Are those governments on board doing the same thing of spraying to get rid of them? Because like you based it on is like, hey, we can take care of this area, but if you got the neighborhoods right next to you that you ain't touching, boom, we just wasted that money.
That's fair. I've not heard from Lake County, and I asked them if they're going to participate. My understanding is they're not doing a spray program. The high numbers, as you can see, they're conservation districts. So even if Lake County was, you still have those conservation district properties that decided they're not going to spray unless they change between now and the spring. We're going to assume, or I think it's a reasonable assumption, they're not going to spray. So yeah, and I've not heard that Walworth County in particular is going to spray. The state of Wisconsin is active in the slow spray program, but Walworth County, like McHenry County, is infested, and that's not part of the slow spray.
Yeah, because your map you had last time where we had Kenosha, Walworth along the border was a high number reflecting in Illinois too, in Lake County.
To the point about next steps, if I just want to clarify, certainly I think it's a fair and reasonable request to our municipal partners that they participate. If the county's going to participate, my question would be, is the county's action contingent on their participation? So what if they say no? They say, you know what, welcome the attention, but they're not going to kick in and help pay for it.
That's why we need a quick answer from them, whether or
Well,
not
we need to
we shouldn't play our hand either way.
Yeah, go ahead, Carolyn.
Well, is it possible to just, I mean, obviously we've put all this effort into getting data. So going out and verifying is still good information whether we end up spraying or not, because it actually shows, it concludes the process, right? Especially since we know that these populations can boom and then they bust. So this is gonna let us know, block 1 is in year 3 if they're gonna have the egg masses anyway. Second of all, we do have people who don't want their property sprayed. 3 acres, they're not gonna miss that property. They're gonna spray that property. There's no way they're gonna stop the spray and suddenly miss 3 acres out of 128 and not spray that property. So I do think we need, we're making a decision here to act on something that, you have the conservation district that's not willing to spray at all. Certain counties aren't even spraying because they recognize that this has already infested the area and it is impacting individual private homeowners. And so what is our obligation to them? I understand it's a huge deal and I'm not saying that we don't want to help in some way, but I would like to know, 2 of these big properties are in Bull Valley, and where is Bull Valley on this? Not just the property owners, which I think is very important, but the village itself. What are they thinking? And so I'd be really wanting to know that, but I don't think that stops you from verifying. You can still do the verification while we continue to iron out what the municipalities are willing to do.
If the property owners consent.
And again, yeah.
If they don't let us on, that's the end of the discussion.
Well, that's true too. And then we're
not doing a search warrant for this.
So, I think there's ways that we can start to move forward, but allow us to kind of tie up some of these other details, because I don't know that I'm comfortable walking out of here saying, yes, absolutely, we'll do, because to your point, we'll do half for private owners and a third for municipalities if we don't even know if they'll do that. But then are we then committing to a half?
I see it, to me, their decision on whether they would do it, we need to present something to them. If they don't know what we're gonna do with them, how are they gonna make a decision whether they're gonna do it or not?
Yeah.
Absolutely, but I would like to have village input as well.
I agree, village input and financial
Before we
participation.
make a decision.
but If we have something to present to them, they got something to make a decision on. Otherwise, they're starting from scratch and
they're a year away.
We're not gonna get it done.
No, I understand that we can talk to them about what our proposal is, but I would like to have some input from them.
And this week is a good week for them because they're all starting their monthly board meetings, getting the information out to them, which might get back and they say, no, I don't, or please give us more, catching them like we are starting our new year out.
Okay, Lou, did you have something?
Yeah, I do. Scott, is there a greater good here? If we take this on and we spray, is there a greater good than the good of the individual property owner or the municipality? I mean, are we saving these ancient oaks long-term? Is there a greater good? That's the question.
And I think that is one of the fundamental questions to this whole policy consideration. Is there a public interest served in preserving a legacy oak tree on somebody's private property? A tree pre-existed the private property, in some cases pre-existed the county. What this will do is endeavor to protect that oak tree for a year from spongy moths, which can create substantial pressure on it. If they've been defoliated for 2 years or more, usually they can survive 2 years depending on stressors. By 3 years, it kills that 100, 200 plus year old oak tree. So that's really the question to the county board. Is there a public interest served in protecting somebody's private oak tree, a legacy oak tree within the county? That I can't answer, only you can.
My answer is yes.
Yeah. To me, that is the fundamental question. If people don't want to pitch in and help pay for it, is it important enough to us as a county to salvage whatever trees we can? Oak is a legacy of this county. And so while I agree with many comments here, to me, when we drill down into the weeds on this, we lose why we started this to begin with, which is saving the legacy of these trees. Whether they're on private property or not, they contribute to the overall health and well-being of the environment across the board. So I would put that in front of us and let Scott move forward and and aggressively pursue this. And yes, talk to municipalities and homeowners. But the bottom line, as I would vote yes, whether people financially share the burden or not, because I think the Oak legacy is important in this county, and that's me.
Okay, thank you, Lou, and I think most of us agree with you on that point of it, but if they're not gonna be financially involved in it, are they wanting it on their property at all? Comes back to questions, so,
I know,
Yeah.
I know.
so.
But
go
we
ahead.
have to be, I think we have to be clear what our mission is. And so we get buy-in along the way, that makes it even better. And if we don't, maybe we do it anyway. I mean, unless the owners say, no, don't spray here. I can't see that being an overarching don't spray. I really can't. From the number of people that have called me about the county taking on this, helping them with this, I can't see that there'd be a majority of people that would say, don't spray, but there could be. I don't know.
There's gonna be people that say don't spray because then it doesn't obligate them to a financial situation, so that's what I think. Carolyn, did you have something?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that I do know the Oak legacy is very important. I know it's very important to the Conservation District. They have a no spray policy. These do kind of boom and bust. It is very detrimental to oaks or trees that are already stressed. And so, yes, we do have more than anything, the oak protection of the oak legacy is something that the Conservation District has really worked on for a long time. Not only the Big Woods program, which is to reestablish the oak canopy, but to protect what we have. And we have some language that is being included in our Regional Planning Commission's 2050 plan that specifically talks about the oak legacy. And yet, even with that importance, we have conservation districts and the forest preserve districts that don't spray. So it's, I think there is a difference of opinion about what is the proper way to go forward with something like this. And for me, I'm not that professional. I'm not that person in the conservation who understands exactly why they're not doing it or why they should, or are there certain areas, and I do have some questions out to answer some of that, but you've got very intelligent people who will come to a different conclusion about how to move forward.
Yep. And that's why we've been hashing this out for 3
Yeah.
months, 4 months.
Yep.
I know that Mr. Kearns has to leave quickly here, and I would like, if you're willing to share your thoughts on Mr. Gottemaler's proposal about cost sharing before you leave, so we have something solid to move
I
forward.
like the ask of the cost share. I'm not tied to stopping the program if they don't participate.
Yeah,
I
I agree
still
with
think
that.
we should participate
Yeah.
regardless. And one of my thoughts been going through my head, Conservation District. I thought she said when she was here that one time speaking with us that they would individually spot trees if they had a tree.
If it were in a park.
More if it was
In the park,
like if it's one and they can just deal with the one tree. They
Yeah.
would not do any
Yeah,
kind
not a
of.
mass thing. I think
No.
that was the reason, because they didn't want to kill the rest of the.
So you're in favor of,
I'm in favor of doing this.
as a cost share proposal?
I would do it either way, because I feel this is way under what I expected it to cost.
Yeah, I agree with Jim. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, and John, you want to?
The only thing is, I think that if a municipality, any municipality says, no, we're not participating, I don't think it's our lane to go into another municipality and spray for them if they don't want to do it.
Well, that was one of my questions.
It's not our lane
they'd
to
be
go
able to
into
stop us.
somewhere else and do it, whether they want us to or not.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, but we're talking about private property owners. This is a municipality. It's not land held by the municipality. And quite frankly, if the municipality says no and they don't want to help out their residents, the residents can talk to their mayors and city councils and let them know how unhappy they are with it. That's not we have a bigger picture here.
Well, I know how we feel about the state telling us to do a solar panel.
Well, we can't force a municipality if they're saying absolutely you're not gonna fly over and spray. You can't stop, you can't. force them to do it.
So we still need some type of consensus for Scott to take the municipalities. So I think everybody's agreeing that we should do something, we do some type of cost share. I think the cost share, particularly, Mr. Gottemoeller's proposal, if they're not willing to do a cost share, how do they have, what's in their heart of whether they want it at all? Because as you said, it isn't that costly. If they don't have some participation financially in it, then to me it's saying they don't want it. That's my opinion. Joe, did you have more?
No, I think that it's pretty clear we all want to at least go forward and find out what needs to be done.
I think that's.
You know, we may run into a roadblock, you may only be doing one of these or two of these. And we'll do, but we can't make that decision today until we get the rest of it.
But do we send Scott forward with the consensus from this committee that we would contact the municipalities and the private owners with a cost share program? I mean, we're sort of at the do nothing, cost share, pay for it all ourselves. Are we consensus that we do it as a cost share program?
Yeah, number 2, and get the data like Mr.
Well, data for
Hartman
sure,
said.
data for sure.
But number 2, like Joe pointed out, or I've mentioned, equal amongst all.
And is that a reasonable cost share scenario that Mr. Gottemoeller pointed out? I personally think that's a good starting point. And
I'm
if it's gotta
certainly
be-
willing to change. I don't see me saying, no, I'm not going to do a program, okay? I don't, even if we get so good, because I agree with Jim that I was pretty shocked to see that the whole program for everything is 28 grand.
I would be shocked when it's all over with if that is the cost. If we don't put some type of limit on it. I think it'd be somewhat more than that.
Well, I think that we don't have that number. This is what we have in front of us. I think this is what we have to vote on, the $28,000, giving Scott the, move forward and do the research and then act as though we're going to do the project and take a look at it when he comes back to us. I don't know if the cost goes up, I don't have that information in front of me.
Okay, but as long as you're online, Lou, are you cost share?
I would vote, I'm in agreement with Jim Kearns. Either way, I'm do the project no matter.
Okay.
This is a scary thing that Lou and I
I was
actually.
just like,
Yeah, we should get more of this in minutes.
yeah, I'm just like, wait a minute. Okay, let's.
This is a historical moment.
Glad we're in the building.
Yeah, well, my thought on it is when you agree to pay for it outright, you're gonna get a lot more participation than otherwise.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's my concern. So I have two things that I'm fine with moving forward in terms of verification. I'm not fine on a cost share at this point because I do want to know, I want a couple things in place before we make that decision. What is our minimum level of infestation or whatever, acres, whatever, that needs to be met in order for us to go in and even think about doing something like this? Because this is just this year, okay? And who knows, if the county is going to pay for half of your pest management on your property, and I know it's a serious thing, I'm not minimizing this, you're going to get a lot more people who will participate, perhaps, going forward, and this is not a done deal. This is not just for this year. I mean, we could be dealing with this for a number of years. So that's my only point. What is our threshold and how we want to move forward? Jim, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I could envision this being a $40,000, $50,000 level ongoing for several years.
For many years.
Right.
Yes,
The rest of our
because
life.
they used to have these programs. We used to have these programs years ago. And whether it was county or state, whatever, we used to have them.
We were trying to be the borderline to stop us from going forward.
Yeah, and
Right,
now,
right.
but now it's a.
Yeah, no, it's everywhere.
So it's everywhere, but I could see us, can't hold future boards onto this, but I could see us saying, we want a program, but we're not gonna spend over this much money, whatever dollar amount you say.
Okay.
In other words, when it's used up, it's used up.
And I see you're ready to go, Scott, but I haven't heard from Carl, but when you outlined no county money spent, cost share program, or pay for it all, sort of like?
Like Mr. Godmauer, you know, a third from, if it
Yeah,
falls
okay, Jim, thank
into,
you, thank you.
if it falls into a municipality, if they're willing to help out the residents by a third, we a third, and the residents a third.
Okay, and Joe, you're sticking by that, right?
Yeah, that would be my.
I mean, there's some fine
recommendation.
tuning that could be done.
Yeah, I understand that that may not be the case, but I think that's a good starting point.
Okay, and Jim, sorry, John, you were sort of the cost shared, is that what I understood?
Yeah, cost shared. I mean, if a municipality doesn't want to participate, they're telling us they're not interested.
Okay, so while we don't have a,
It's
yeah,
in our
I
hand to do
agree.
that.
Well, we don't have a full committee agreement on this. There are 4 of us here.
There's enough to move forward.
There's enough to go forward.
Move forward with the idea that it would be a
Everybody's on
cost share program.
Yeah.
When you contact the municipalities or these private owners, whether those numbers are set in stone right now, we don't know that because we're not voting on anything here today anyway, right?
Yeah. And the other thing, I do want to just say, because I think bringing this to the full board would be a mistake. I mean, look how long it's taken us to understand this spongy moth thing. And I can't imagine trying to articulate this in a bottom line way to the full board. So I'm really comfortable. This committee has done a lot of work, gathered a lot of information. I think Scott has done, and you probably know more about the spongy moth than you ever wanted to know, Scott. So,
That's a true statement.
I mean, I think he's the spongy moth expert in the room for the county. I think we are the ones to make this decision and carry it forward.
Okay, and I agree, Lou, and I think that's pretty much the consensus of the committee. We need to formulate a plan and have something concise to take to the whole board, otherwise we're gonna have
I would note the historical portion of the meeting just ended because Jim left and he was not in agreement with that. So Lou and Jim weren't in agreement on
Oh, there you
everything,
go.
just only one thing today.
Here we are, back to old behavior.
Oh, that part,
What can
okay.
we tell?
I'm not too quick on the uptake on that one, Joe. I got you.
All right.
That should be recorded, yes. Okay. And I just was trying to draw something from the committee to be, so Scott could move forward. Is there anything else that you guys would like to fine tune, add in on this? Before, or anything else you need, Scott? You were gonna talk? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
just the point being, just so we know what we're doing. This is suppression
Do
of
we
a
know what we're
hotspot. This is not eradication of spongy moths, not eradication for the area. You're providing relief for those oak trees for a short period of time so they can recover. It was said that you may be doing this again and again. I did conclude my report with kind of a what if, and a what if they say, what if the population crashes? Historical trend data shows that when you have a spike, it's subsequently followed by a crash. We saw that from 2010 to 2011. I asked the question, is 2023 the apex of that population and is it going to crash this year? We don't know. Secondly, if we have a warm, wet spring, the entomophaga maimai, which is the fungal
You're just showing off now.
that affects a lepidoptera. Well, big word. And that could be something too. Those are things that we just need to keep in mind that nature could take care of this, and it has shown in the past. However, that's a risk. If you're a gambling person, then you can certainly roll the dice. But I would strongly recommend that you may not want to take that chance. If you're inclined to save these trees, this is the approach to do. So I do appreciate the guidance and the guidance.
Well, my opinion is if the verification isn't there, then we don't move forward.
The final challenge I have, though, is the egg mass verification is a pretty intensive process. I mean, that is literally boots on the ground to verify it. I can't sit here and tell you exactly how that's going to happen, because if it's just me, there's other challenges that are going to pose on my other duties and responsibilities. We're going to have to work internally to figure out how we can best do that if the property owners will not assist us or aren't able to assist us. So let me just leave that as open-ended to say more needs to come on that, and that may
Well,
not
I'm
be
almost to
something-
the point where I'm saying the data that we collected last year, I mean, that's why we did it all, so we'd know if we needed to move forward this year. Otherwise, we're collecting data in retrospect from the time that we needed to have it sprayed, in a sense, aren't we? Or, I mean, once we figure out, yeah, we have to have it sprayed, it's too late.
But the egg
Yeah.
mass verification would identify whether we're already past that bust stage.
Yes.
Well, like if the eggs aren't there, then it really would have already busted and there may not be the need to spray. But if the egg masses are there, then they would
Okay.
confirm that we would be moving forward with the spray. So
Well, and I think
verification is
Scott
important.
will be able to tell us that. I mean, we're gonna take your lead, Scott. You're gonna tell us whether we need to do this or not. And if it's gonna be a program that's gonna grow, we could look at that in the future. We just need you to move forward and get going on it now, so that if we do have to push the button, we can. So go do that stuff and then we'll do the next step.
We'll have the program in place as we need it.
So
Yeah,
the county's,
exactly.
county's willing to consider a cost share program, whatever that looks like. Next step is contact the property owners and or contact the municipalities about their participation in the program.
Great.
Everybody, I think that's where we're at, and I think the cost share
Yeah.
program could vary roughly based on the numbers that we were talking about, the 50, the one-third, one-third, one-third kind of
I'm
thing.
pretty sure when you was in school taking all those courses about county administration, you never once thought he was gonna be looking for egg masses on trees.
What chapter was that?
I think I might have missed that class, I'm not sure.
How many eggs on the bark of an oak tree?
Look at the bright side, you could be
Administration
contributing to
101.
the course curriculum, being the expert.
Yeah, but I think we've drawn some good conclusions, and
You're signing up for Northern's next course,
Right,
right?
thank you. But this is really, this is a course in public policy. This is truly one of those fundamental public policy questions that you have to deal with, and from an academic standpoint, it's fascinating to be part of that process. Doesn't matter the subject matter, it's what you have to debate. Public resources for, potentially private impact, so I appreciate that.
Well, let's not complicate that right now, Scott.
Well, anyway, I do think we did a good job of coming to a consensus as a committee on this particular subject, so we can move forward. Is that-
Yeah.
Okay.
So too.
We'll move forward then. Thank you, Scott, and everyone participating. We're looking at reports for the ZBA. So,
There's only two. I'm gonna be so brief, I'm not even gonna sit down.
okay, wow. Me neither then.
The first one that you have is it's all variations. It went to the hearing officer, it got approval. It's a couple or a family that bought this beautiful property up in the northern part of the county, and they're doing a little agritourism thing, mostly selling eggs. They've got those really cool, small little bulls from Scotland. They have a pretty big TikTok presence. They're doing well. But what they failed to do was get permits before they started building some buildings. So we caught them doing that. They needed some variations for that, and that's what this is about. It's variations for their farmstead buildings and for their signage. Because they have a unique situation in that they have a flag lot with a very skinny
Where's this at?
flag. It's up on Hebron Road. It's near Alden and Hebron.
17,000.
Yeah. It's a beautiful property. It was somebody built it back on this flag lot with all these like ponds around it, and it's absolutely stunning.
Okay.
And the things that they've done so far are stunning as well.
It's a really long drive. You're right.
It's a long
flagpole. I
driveway.
didn't really, when you said that, I saw the top part, but not the.
Yeah, which is why they started building buildings back there, because we couldn't see, obviously. But they are doing a little farmstead building near the road to sell their products from. So that area is so skinny, they need variations for that. And then the other one is it's changed from Sierra Power to Mega Plant Crystal Lake now. It's a solar farm that you guys saw. You saw it with some other solar farms that came through after the law changed. This was the last one to come through before the law changed. So they wanted to get rid of the time limit as well, but they didn't get the benefit of the resolution that we drew up for all the ones that came in under the new law. So they went through the process to go before ZBA and ask for an amendment to get rid of that 10-year time limit. And the ZBA was in agreement and recommends approval of that one.
I thought that one was a reduction in size too, was it, or no?
I don't think so. I think that the site plan changed a tiny bit. There is a new site plan that's part of it, but the main thing they asked for was the 10-year time limit because they could not get financing. So that's why they were asking for that. And that one is, their attorney is Mr. Jack Franks. Seen him in a while, so.
But you know, I did notice.
Before the war.
Okay, I did notice one thing, and that was somewhere I thought that because they were originally under the old.
Yeah, they are 150, and I looked, and it didn't look like that had changed, but I will double check that with the planner and make sure.
There's language in there that says 100%.
Okay.
That,
Okay,
yeah,
I'll make sure.
somewhere in the documents from them, they go back to 100%, it's not 150.
Okay. All right, we'll double check that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have, we got future topics? Executive sessions not needed. Motion to adjourn by Carl, seconded by John. Any discussion? All those